there, curious minds. Ever wish you had a more straightforward way to really get what's happening in cybersecurity, beyond the headlines?
Yeah, like what it actually involves day to day.
Exactly. So today we're giving you just that. We're doing a deep dive using some really interesting insights from the CompTIA Cybersecurity Analyst material, the CySA plus SANE,
Mm-hmm.
specifically looking at the kinds of real-world scenarios analysts actually face.
That's right. And our mission here is really to pull out the most important kind of actionable nuggets of knowledge from this.
Right.
It's about giving you, the listener, a clearer, more practical feel for critical cybersecurity domains and, well, what a cybersecurity analyst actually does.
So it's less about exam prep.
Oh, definitely. Think of it more like gaining strategic insights into how digital defenses are actually managed. It's not just a tech breakdown.
Okay, good distinction. So before we really dive in, just briefly setting the stage, the material we're drawing from, it really highlights these key areas for analysts.
It does. It presents challenges that mirror real incidents, real vulnerabilities.
Which really helps frame these, sometimes complex ideas in practical terms.
Absolutely.
Okay, with that, let's jump into our first scenario.
Let's do it.
All right, let's kick things off with a pretty classic cybersecurity challenge. Imagine this. An analyst is investigating an internal data breach.
Okay.
Root cause seems to be stolen credentials. They track down the first system that was compromised.
Right, patient zero, so to speak.
Kind of, and their immediate response is to isolate it, yank it off the network to stop whatever's happening from spreading.
Makes sense.
So, for you listening, or for us here,
Yep.
what's the crucial step? What phase of the incident response lifecycle are they in right at that moment?
Well, that immediate decisive action, that's unequivocally the containment phase.
Containment, okay.
Yeah. Isolating a compromised system is like the core action here. It's precisely about preventing further spread, limiting the damage.
He's straightforward enough.
Well, the real challenge often isn't just isolating it, but doing it fast without, crippling essential business functions that might depend on that system.
Ah, right. There's always a trade-off.
Always. It's a high-stakes balancing act. Speed versus impact. Get containment wrong or too slow, and a small breach can just explode across the network.
Turning a minor thing into a potential catastrophe.
Exactly. A company-wide crisis.
That makes complete sense for, say, one system. But what about large companies, big distributed networks? Is it always just pull the plug immediately?
That's a really good point, and it gets into the nuance, right? While immediate isolation is often the default, sometimes, especially with more advanced threats like APTs, advanced persistent threats, a mature response plan might include, let's call it segmentation and observation.
Okay, so not cutting it off completely.
Not immediately, maybe. You might shunt the compromised system into a controlled environment like a honeypot or just a heavily monitored segment.
Why would you do that? Seems risky.
It is a calculated risk, yeah. But the goal is to gather more forensic intel. Learn about the attacker's tools, their methods, their objectives, before you fully kick them out.
Gather intelligence for later.
Precisely. It can provide invaluable information to bolster defenses long term.
Okay, got it. So the threat's contained, one way or another. But how did this attack even get spotted in the first place?
Good question.
Which brings us to, threat detection. So here's another scenario for you. A company's CIME system.
Their security information and event management system. Big central log collector and correlator.
Right. That system flags an alert. It shows a regular user logged in from a really weird geographical location late at night.
Unusual.
And then really quickly accessed multiple sensitive file servers. So what kind of activity, what kind of red flag is the analyst honing in on here?
Okay, this is a perfect example of anomaly behavior analysis.
Anomaly behavior.
Yeah. The CIME is essentially built to spot these deviations from what's considered normal for that user, or maybe within the network generally.
So the weird time, the weird location.
Exactly. For that specific person, plus the rapid access to sensitive stuff, those are all red flags because they just don't fit the established pattern of behavior.
Makes sense.
And, the real art here isn't just spotting anything unusual because networks are noisy. It's tuning the system to tell the difference between a genuine threat and just background noise.
Alert fatigue must be a huge issue then.
Oh, a massive challenge for analysts. If your CIME isn't configured well, you drown in alerts. That's why understanding the baseline, the normal context, is absolutely key.
And CIMEs help because they see the whole picture.
Exactly. They correlate logs from maybe hundreds or thousands of sources, rather than just seeing isolated alerts from individual systems. That correlation is powerful.
It sounds like these SIEMs are basically essential tools.
They really are, yeah.
But given just the sheer amount of data, the number of alerts, how does an analyst realistically avoid just being totally overwhelmed?
That is the million-dollar question for a lot of security operations centers, or SOCs. It really takes a combination of things, like robust SIEM configuration, good filtering, careful rule tuning, establishing that baseline we mentioned,
And skilled people.
and skilled analysts who understand the business context. That's crucial. Without context, every user logging in from a hotel looks suspicious.
Right.
With context, an analyst can quickly say, okay, Bob's traveling for work, that's fine, versus, wait, this user never logs in after midnight from that country.
So it needs constant tweaking, constant refinement.
Absolutely essential. Otherwise, real threats get buried in the noise.
Okay, so we've covered containing a breach after it happens and detecting weird behavior. But what if you find a gaping hole in your defenses before anything bad happens?
A vulnerability.
Yeah, serious one. And here's the situation. A vulnerability analyst finds a new vulnerability, CVSS score of 9.8.
Oof, that's critical. Almost the worst possible score.
Right, and it affects several key internet-facing web servers. But here's the real kicker. There is no patch available right now.
Ah, the dreaded 0 day, or just a vulnerability without a quick fix. Happens all the time.
So what's the move? What do you recommend when you literally can't patch the hole?
Okay, this highlights a really common and frankly deeply frustrating problem.
I bet.
In this scenario, the best immediate recommendation is usually to implement specific intrusion detection system rules, or maybe intrusion prevention system rules, IPS.
IDS or IPS rules to do what?
To detect and ideally block attempts to actually exploit that vulnerability. When you don't have a patch, you need what we call a compensating control.
Compensating control.
Okay. Think of an IDS or IPS rule tailored for this vulnerability as like a virtual patch. It sits there watching the traffic, and it actively identifies and tries to block malicious traffic that matches the pattern of someone trying to exploit that specific unpatched hole.
So it watches for the attack technique itself.
Exactly. By looking for specific signatures in the network traffic, or maybe behavioral indicators that suggest an attack targeting that vulnerability, it's a really critical stopgap measure.
Buys you time until a real patch comes out.
Precisely. It gives you protection until a permanent fix can be developed and deployed. I remember one time, years ago, we had a critical 0 day. No patch for weeks.
Yeah.
Our IDS, with rules we wrote quickly, caught and blocked literally thousands of exploit attempts targeting it. It really drove home how vital those compensating controls can be.
Wow, okay. So it's not just about waiting for the patch, it's about getting creative with defense.
Absolutely. You have to be adaptable.
But I mean, is a virtual patch ever really as good as a proper fix from the vendor? What are the downsides?
That's a really crucial distinction to make. No, a virtual patch or an IDSIPSIS rule is almost never as good as a direct vendor-supplied security patch that fixes the underlying code.
Why not?
Well, the trade-offs are often in things like performance. Sometimes these rules can slow things down. Complexity writing good rules is hard. And completeness, a rule might miss a slightly different variation of the exploit attempt.
Whereas a real patch fixes the root cause.
Exactly. A proper patch addresses the actual flaw in the software. But look, when time is critical and no patch exists, a compensating control like an IDS rule is an absolutely vital way to reduce your immediate risk.
It's about risk reduction then, not perfect security.
It's always about risk reduction in the absence of a perfect fix.
Okay. We've talked a lot about reacting, containing incidents, responding to SIEM alerts.
The reactive side.
But what about the security pros who are actively looking for trouble before it sets off any alarm?
Now we're getting into the proactive stuff. Good.
Right. So here's the scenario. A security analyst suspects something. They think maybe an unknown malicious process is trying to phone home to an external server.
Like a command and control or C2 server.
Yeah, maybe using an encrypted channel to hide. And here's the key part. The analyst starts proactively digging through network traffic, looking for weird patterns. They're not waiting for a SIEM alert to pop up.
Okay. Crucial difference.
So what specific task is this analyst doing, this proactive searching?
This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Because it's a completely different mindset from just handling alerts.
Yeah.
The task they're performing is threat hunting.
Threat hunting, cool.
And that distinction is critical. They're not waiting for an alarm. They are actively, deliberately searching for hidden threats. things that might have already slipped past the existing defenses. The firewalls, the antivirus, the scene alerts.
So it assumes you might already be compromised.
Exactly. It operates on the assumption that compromise is possible, maybe even likely, and you just haven't found it yet. Threat hunting is like being a detective searching for clues to a crime before anyone's even reported it.
That sounds
Yeah.
intense and difficult.
It requires deep knowledge, intuition, understanding the environment, and often, starting with a hypothesis and meticulously digging through data to prove or disprove it, looking for those faint digital breadcrumbs.
That's a really powerful shift in mindset from just waiting for alerts.
It is a very necessary one in modern security.
But it sounds almost intuitive, maybe. How do you even start a threat hunt? Like, where do you look if there's no obvious alarm bell ringing?
It often begins with a hypothesis, like you said, maybe based on threat intelligence.
Okay.
For example, hey, we just read a report that attackers are using this new technique involving PowerShell. So the hypothesis is, could this technique be active in our network?
And then you go looking for signs of that specific technique.
Exactly. You'd proactively scan logs, network data, endpoint process activity for signs of that specific TDP tactics, techniques, and procedures. Or maybe it's more general, like, let's look for any unusual DNS requests going to newly registered domains.
So it could be driven by external intel or just internal suspicion.
Right. It's a blend of knowing attacker methods, knowing your own environment, using specialized tools, and having that investigative mindset to dig through potentially vast amounts of data, looking for subtle indicators that maybe alone look okay, but together.
Together they tell a story.
Precisely. They reveal a hidden threat.
Okay, all these technical challenges we've discussed, containment, detection, fixing or mitigating vulnerabilities, hunting for hidden threats, they don't happen in a vacuum, right? Ultimately, it's all about protecting the business.
Absolutely. It always comes back to the business context.
So let's zoom out to that bigger picture. Imagine an incident response meeting is happening.
Okay.
The team isn't just talking tech details. They're discussing the potential business impact of a security vulnerability, one that could expose sensitive customer data.
Right. The so what question.
Exactly. They're evaluating potential damage to the company's reputation, its finances, potential fines, legal compliance issues. When a team is having this kind of conversation, what core process are they engaged in?
Connecting it back to the bigger picture like that, that's a clear example of risk assessment.
Risk assessment.
Yeah. Evaluating that potential damage, reputation, financials, legal standing is a fundamental part of the risk assessment process.
And what does that process involve broadly?
Well, typically it involves identifying a specific risk, like this vulnerability, then analyzing its potential impact. What's the worst that could happen? And its likelihood, how probable is it that this vulnerability will be exploited?
Okay, impact and likelihood.
Right. And combining those helps determine the overall severity of the risk. It's really the foundation of risk management. It helps the organization understand what it truly stands to lose from different threats.
And that understanding guides their decisions.
Absolutely. It guides strategic decisions on how best to prioritize resources, mitigate the risk, transfer it, or even accept it. It's not just about fixing tech flaws. It's about understanding the real-world business consequences.
So risk assessment drives the strategy. But is it like a one-time check, or does it need to be ongoing?
Oh, it's absolutely an ongoing process. Definitely not a one-and-done thing.
Why is that?
Because the landscape is constantly changing, isn't it? New threats emerge, new vulnerabilities are discovered daily. The business itself changes its priorities and systems.
So the risks change too.
Constantly. Risks need to be continuously reevaluated and reassessed.
Well, that makes sense. But how do you handle the fuzzy stuff? Like, how do you put a number, a dollar figure on something intangible like reputational damage? That seems really hard.
You've hit on one of the trickiest parts, absolutely. Quantifying those intangible impacts like damage to reputation, loss of customer trust, brand erosion is definitely challenging.
So how do they do it? Or try to?
Well, you often can't put an exact, precise dollar figure on, say, public perception. But organizations use various methods to estimate these soft costs.
Like what?
Things like modeling potential loss of future revenue if customers leave, estimating the impact on the company's stock price, figuring out the likely cost of crisis management, PR campaigns, legal fees.
So trying to quantify the consequences of the reputational hit?
Exactly.
Yep.
You estimate the cost of dealing with the fallout. These estimated soft costs are then factored into the overall risk calculation alongside the more direct costs, like cleanup or fines.
So it's about making informed decisions, even if the numbers aren't perfectly exact science.
Precisely. It's about getting a reasonable handle on the potential magnitude, even for the fuzzier impacts, so you can prioritize effectively.
Okay. Okay. So a final thought then.
Yeah, maybe something for you, listening right now, to mull over. I'd encourage you to reflect on what these insights, seeing these different roles and challenges, mean for how you view digital security in your own life.
How so?
Well, how might understanding these structured approaches, containment, detection, risk assessment, how might that change the way you approach your own digital privacy and security practices? And maybe, what new questions does it spark for you about how your data, your online presence, is actually being protected? Or perhaps how it could be?